Welcome, everybody. We talked about this last town hall we did. I expect, at least for a little while this whole we're getting the grid assembled and put together, that we're going to do kind of regular touch points just to give people status. So this is one of those. I want to talk through a couple of points, and I'm just going to kind of work straight through my list, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. I think Kelly's already addressed that. If you want to address a question either in text chat, or in voice, please raise your hand, and that way we can make sure we don't miss anyone's questions, and get everything answered. But I'm going to start with the state of the grid. So people, you may have seen floating around pictures of our welcome area, things like that. There's the basic grid structures up and running. There's all the grid services are in place. I've got at this point 3 regions turned up. I'm going to do more before the end of the day. We have the welcome area and 2 sandboxes. That's basically to facilitate people being able to get to log in and start uploading and assembling stuff if you'd like to. There's plenty of things left to get fully configured to be operational, like money, the basic token-based concurrency I talked about. There's lots of things like that. I have to get backups working. We addressed that as well. So we're kind of at a point where I think it's okay to open this up a bit more to residents and start to get access. I'd like to kind of address my journey over the past week, because it's I had said I wanted to be in a position where we could accept logins and so on by this weekend, and I think we're going to be able to do that, but not entirely in the way that I had hoped. But basically, I spent the last week pretty much working on assembling all the tech to get the grid up and running. We're using, so I can safely say that what you'll be logging into when you log into Skye Grid is the most secure version of Halcyon that I'm aware of, for a couple of reasons. There are a number of pieces of software that are part of the grid, that make up the grid, that frankly had not been recompiled since David did it. So it's number of years old, and I won't run something that I don't know the provenance of. If I'm just not comfortable doing that. In fact, there was an incident where the binaries that are up on the GitHub site for Halcyon Grid actually were flagged as having viruses. So they got recently taken down, and Ricky's now encouraging people to compile from source, which I think is a good plan. That's absolutely what I've done. So not only did I build all the grid software from scratch, I had to do some software development around that and upgraded the database connector so that it was using the latest version, because I want to use secure connections to the database in order to not leave that stuff open. And the versions of the database and the rest of the tools were old enough that they didn't support the current TLS spec that is recommended that people use. So basically, you'd have to have configured your grid previously, either without SSL or with an old version that's considered hacked and insecure. So that's all been addressed. I fixed it all. I have our grids running with updated connector software for the database. The database is running the latest of the 5 series of MySQL so that it's current and secure. SSL is enabled. The other thing I did, which was an interesting task, was rebuild WIP, which is the assets store database. I know for a fact that has not been built since David did it, because the current source in the Halcyon Grid tree does not compile. So anyway, I had to work through that to get that up and running. Ran a bunch of tests to shake down the software, and verified I can push 100 megabytes a second in and out at the same time of that asset server. So it's in pretty good shape. I think we should be good for quite a while, and it will scale as WIP normally does by adding additional replicas. So I think that infrastructure is in good shape, and it's all built fresh from the source code. So at this point, I have a grid running that I know where all the software came from because I compiled it myself, and I know that it's set up to be as secure as it possibly can be, because I configured it that way. And like I said, I think I can safely say it's the most secure install that I'm aware of. Somebody else might have solved some of the same problems, but I'm not aware of it. So that's good for us, I think. And ideally, that means that we have a good basis to build on going forward. So all that being said, I had hoped to be able to get to the web portal this week as well and have a full setup with a web portal so you could manage your accounts and so on. And unfortunately, because of the testing that I had to do with that I just walked through, I wasn't able to get that part completed. So we have a grid. I can make accounts right now. It's a manual process. I've done that for some people, and I will offer right now to anybody that's listening in or anybody that's in the SG residence area, if you hear about this later, if you'd like an account, it would have to be manually created right now. I will generate a password that nobody else will know, and send you the information. But I can do that, and you can log in and at least start to get familiar with your account and set up your avatar and so on. We have some resources on the Welcome Center area, copies of some of the Ruth and Roth avatars and so on. And we have a couple of people very generously putting together starter avatars that we can also use to get going. In particular, Tanya Matahari and Rosa D'Agostino and Fairy Scribe are working on a set of starter avatars for the grid, which I very much appreciate. I love seeing that. So if you're willing to do this, like I said, it's a manual process right now. I will create your account. You'll be able to log in. The grid, for the next 2 weeks, I'll consider it kind of in beta stage. May occasionally have to take things down for maintenance while I finish configuring the rest of the tools and set up all the rest of the services. I'll try and notify people when that happens in SG General in our residence area, so that you know that I'm taking it down. And hopefully it won't be down for long. It's really going to be a maintenance restart or something like that. So, and I've kind of built this so that doesn't have to require taking the whole grid down as much as possible. Like I said, we'll get you accounts created. If you'd like to, send a message to Callie and she will collect the names, and then I'll basically generate accounts and get them back out to you individually through private messages. And we can you can start to access the grid. In the meantime, I'm going to be working on setting up the website so that all this that process will eventually be self-service. You'll be able to change your password and manage your account settings and things like that. So, and that's all going to be in place before the end of the month, when I'm hoping we can have most of the regions turned up that have been ordered and really go live. I'm not going to do, if we turn up regions before December 1st, I won't do billing until December 1st for them. And I'm planning on turning up regions before then. We'll basically start the financial clock on December 1st, but I'll keep the grid up and running in the meantime while we finish setup and get everything all up and running. And like I said, I'm hoping that we basically will be in a good spot to be able to create, we're going to take orders and create more regions and so on as needed going forward from there. So we'll be up and running and operational. That's pretty much the status of the grid and account creation. Like I said, if you want an account, send the message to Callie asking her for one, and I will take the list of names that she collects, get the accounts created, and send your account information back to you. As I said, the only one will have it will be me. And frankly, once I get the list kind of created, I'm probably going to destroy it so that, if you need a password change or something, we'll have to do it manually. But the goal is to have the website up and running as soon as possible so you can all do this self-service. I discussed the region bring up and billing. Like I said, my goal is to bring up regions over the next 2 weeks. I've got a server now that will handle all the public regions and some of the waterway pieces. I need to order one more server, which I'm doing today, now that I have a grid kind of operational to connect it to. And that will be the basis for a lot of the private regions to start. And we'll have to order additional servers as needed to address this. These are physical servers, by the way, not virtual machines like has been used in the past. So, but I'm very pleased. I'm personally kind of pleased with where things are at. I like the architecture and I like the way things are going together. I feel like my kind of rough estimates of scaling are on track, and we should be in pretty good shape to give a pretty performant grid and the ability to grow it as we need. So I think we're looking good. That I'm really happy to be in this position right now. It's really only been about 2 weeks since we've started, and I think we've made good, solid progress. And I think we're on target to get the grid up and running and looking pretty positive by the end of November. So December we can start to enjoy it. I've talked about this bring up, the steps to status. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. I think that was the main information I wanted to convey. I mentioned the starter avatars. There's boxes out for Ruth and Roth, and the other ones will be made available as soon as we're able. So let me just turn it over for questions. I think I covered the main points that I'd like to address.
This time, go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll go ahead and invite you to speak in order. Remember, if you don't voice, you'll type your question in SG Welcome.
That's actually a good topic to discuss. When I turn up regions, I'd like to be able to load ores pretty much at region start. Let me talk about this for a second. There's a lot of interesting wrinkles with ores. I know for a fact there's a problem with loading ores from OpenSim if you use materials on the mesh objects. The materials don't come over right now. The materials don't come over. I will fix that problem, but that's not going to help us in the next 2-3 weeks because I won't be able to get it done by then. So that's an issue that will occur, that you basically will be missing materials on things that were put into an ore. We can always reload it again in the future for the data, but that's an issue that's going to happen now. The rest of it is mapping IDs, and many of you are familiar with this from dealing with this in other grids. There's a process. So I'm going to try and load all the ores as filtered ores, which means that only the objects that, for people that have opted in, are going to get loaded. So that means that we need to start to collect names of people that have opted in so when I load ores, they're essentially identifying themselves as being willing to have their content on the grid, and those things get restored correctly. So if you have an ore that you're putting together or that you have available that you think you'd like to use on the grid, I think that it's worthwhile to address that. Start to talk to the content creators that that you want to keep that content. So for instance, we did that with the Welcome Center. There's a number of things on the Welcome Center that were purchased or bought. So things like Kitely content. When you purchase something from Kitely, you get it with the export flag set. So I'm expecting that I will load those just without a problem because they're marked as exportable. But other things that aren't necessarily set up as exportable, the whitelist will apply, and we'll have to essentially have the name of the person in the whitelist in order for that content to get brought in correctly. If you know of things in your ORs that are third party that where you need to get permission, be thinking about that now, because when we load them, if it isn't in the whitelist, they'll get filtered out. There's a few other things that I have to address related to this, which involves mapping IDs, that sort of thing. And I'm working on solutions for those as well. And I'll come back with more information before we get to a point where we have to load anything. That's not something anybody should have to do anything about. I just want to make sure that we can map. If you have a bunch of content in an OR from another grid that it's yours, and you're the creator for it, and your ID, I want to be able to map your ID into the new one so that everything comes across cleanly. So Judy, the second question you asked about how to make ORs available, I'm going to try and set up an area where people can share to, but if you have a way to do that now that I can access, we can use that mechanism as well. So two options. If you have something you can use to share large files and you're comfortable with that, I'll use that mechanism. If not, I'm going to provide a depot where people can upload files, and I'll grab them from there. So that's another kind of thing on my task list for the next week or so, is to try and get as much of that stuff in as possible. Hopefully that answers your questions.
In lieu of any questions, oh, Judy's got another one. I'll add something after you're done with Judy's question. Aha. In lieu of actually making an avatar yet, or account creation, even if you do not decide to have Mike create an account for you today, I do have, and I will post it in the welcome channel, a screenshot of the URL. You can add this URL to your Firestorm currently. Obviously, if you don't elect to have an account created today, you won't be able to log in, but you can at least add it to your viewer. So when you do want to make an account, or when the website's up, or when you feel comfortable, you'll be able to access it. So I'm going to go ahead and post that now. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. I don't see any other hands up. I see Loki typing, so I'll wait. Sauber's got a hand up, a paw up.
All right. I might have missed it if this was said before, but would it be possible for us to, when we're creating our account, to have it be created using our old InWorld's UUID?
Yeah. Yes, so the Halcyon Crate user mechanism doesn't actually fully support that. I'm going to fix that, because that's obviously a pretty common request. And yeah, once that change is made, then we should be able to set it up so your account will track and use the ID from your old account. Then I don't have to map a whole bunch of objects and everything else, and they'll just come in as expected. So yeah, I'd like to be able to support that.
All right. I don't think I have any more questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I don't think that'll be a problem. Let's take first of all, yes, very sorry about the passing. Let's take that offline, and we'll figure out what, if any, issues. I don't think there's an issue there, but that we can't work with. But let's take that offline. If you can follow up with Callie or myself, maybe the thing to do would be to put a ticket in with that information so we don't lose it, and then we'll address that when we get around to loading the ORs. Oh, the link to access the yes. There you go. So one thing I wanted to address, I recognize we've talked about this at the last meeting, the currency issue and having a currency that's cash outable. Once we get the regions up and I do most of that sort of thing, that is my very first project beyond getting the grid operational. We'll have the token-based currency initially, but I want to get a currency that is essentially such that you can support cash outs. Globit was my target, so that's going to be one of the first things that I'll tackle. But it won't be something that'll be available by December 1st, because I've got obviously handling a currency and money is it's important to do a bunch of testing. I really need to make sure that all the transactions are accounted for and nothing gets lost or miscounted. So I'll have to do some testing, a fair amount of testing, but that is my priority beyond getting the grid up and running and the regions restored and operational. And I do think we mentioned this at the last town hall. Kayaker is going to make, I think, some of his vendors available that address the ability to kind of do transactions that go to cash. So that might be an option in the short term before that's available. Any other questions?
I have some things I want to add on to it, but
Sure, go ahead, sweetheart.
no, I can wait and see if there's questions first.
So big takeaway is, if you want an account to log into the grid in the short term, send a message to Callie. I'll make it manually and get back to you. If you're willing to wait, I will have the website up as soon as I possibly can, and that will allow account management and so on from the website. So, and at that point, you'll be able to create your own account and go from there. And I'm sure there will be special cases as much as possible. If something like that comes up, send us a ticket and we'll work with you. I want to make sure that we onboard everybody and this feels like home to you. And so we're going to do our best to try and do the right thing in every case that we can, and make sure that you're set up and working the way you need to be.
It's a perfect segue into the topic that I wanted to touch on, and that is support. We use a ticketing system that's been up for the past week or so, and we're still kind of kicking the tires on it, but it is a very good practice for you to create an account on the support site. This is different than a grid account. It's also different than Discord. So this is an account that does not currently link back to an account because we don't have any yet. At some point in the future, it might, but in the state that it's in today, you have to create a login for it. Now, you can open a ticket without making an account. And as long as you keep the email confirmation with your ticket number, you can also check status of that ticket. But if you want to see your history of tickets, you'll need to create an account. It's really easy to do so if you go to the website, skye-grid.com, and go to support and then click support ticket. That'll take you directly to the ticketing system. We have help topics in there that are also for like enhancements and things that you'd like to see added to the grid. Make liberal use of those. Whether or not something makes it there or what time frame it fits into the roadmap is something that down the road we're kind of discussing, a kind of a voting kind of system. But as of today, this is your best tool next to Discord for communication of any issues. Bear in mind, whether you create an account today and actually log in today, or if you wait till next week and log in next week, um, this grid is going to be subject to the same type of foibles that the other halcyon grids in the past have been subject to. Um, these are things that all need to be fixed. So while this grid is very, very secure, and that's really the thing that we wanted to go for the most, especially given the history that most of you folks have been through, the security was just paramount for us. The next is fixing the rest of the things that need to be looked at. So support tickets, both reporting bugs, any enhancements you'd like, and any issues you're encountering, is the best way to do that. I would like to avoid reporting support issues in Discord. Discord is a really good tool, not so good in the support arena, especially as things scroll up off the screen and get lost. So let's try and keep it to that. If you have any issues creating an account in support, let me know. I'll work with you. But do bear in mind the first communication you get from our support site will likely need to be fished out of spam. So once you fish it out of spam and mark it not spam, future communications should be just fine. Yeah, security is important. I personally feel like a lot of folks here, and in some ways, myself and Mike included, have kind of gotten the short end of the stick while looking for just a home. And I know that there are alternatives in OpenSim that are good and run by, ethical owners. USG is one of them. Discovery's another. I mean, there are other places that are good, but for those that want that home that was in the code base that they're used to, there really hasn't been a place. And so I'm really glad that we can offer this and hope it feels like home for everybody soon. Not to be idealistic, but there it is. So I'm going to mute before I talk myself into a circle. Support's the way to go. If you have any questions, I'm around all the time. I'm happy to help. And I'll open it up for any further questions.
Yeah, I'm going to make one more comment and again, I'll address questions if there's anything else. But one thing in particular that I wanted to mention, because I know this came up in EG, that there is a dance ball that is kind of available and passed around in OpenSim, the Aini Kohim dance ball. We know for a fact it's loaded with a number of botted animations. So, and as much as possible, I'm going to try and be pretty diligent about loading things that aren't, that where we don't have permission to bring them in. Not so much because I want to be heavy-handed about it, but because I think that protects all of us as much as we possibly can. It's possible something will slip through, and we have things in the terms of service to address that. But I will ask you to kind of also be diligent in trying to identify things like that aren't might be compromised. And if you have questions, come and talk to us. But that one in particular I know of because I have a copy of it on OpenSim, and we know the animations. Many of the animations are botted. So in the meantime, we have to keep pushing on and trying to get creators that we care about in and make sure that their content is available legally and is protected. So Judy's got a question. Yes. So Judy's question was, if you created an account manually this week, will it be reachable on the website later to update and so on? Yes. And you will know the password anyway, so you'll be able to go in and update it. But I'll have a mechanism for password changes. I should have said this, and I'm sorry I covered a lot of stuff. When you do send the request to Callie, one of the things I will need is an email address so that you can do things like password changes and so on securely. Because what we'll do is, if you want to, update your password and you don't know it or something like that, we'll use your email as a way to validate and allow you to make the change. So if you want to get in, when you send that information, send an email address as well, and I will apply that when the account's created, and that'll allow you to claim it. I'm going to have to make an exploding pineapple. I think we need one of those. Well, exploding waffles would be good too, yeah. We need a waffle shooter. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. I'm going to be a little bit emotional for a second at the tail end here. One of the things that I want to say is that I am excited myself to make Skye Grid home. I have very many fond memories of InWorlds, and I feel like this community. It's great to see this community of people and the wonderful creators that are a part of it become interested in this project. So I'm really glad to welcome you. I'm happy to be able to create this world so that we can all kind of populate it together and make more new stuff. That's cool, because I think that we have that's my hope, is that we really create something special and that we can do it over again and create especially the sense of community that I personally miss from InWorlds. So, we've done a OpenSim grid for a couple of years now, and it's been reliable, and I think it's been a nice home for us. I'm not ever going to take anything away from it. That plus building up the trusted grid concept with a few other people, discovery and so on, is a good thing. But I also think that the housing code and this closed grid concept, when it's updated and really brought current, has potential to be something really special. So I'm glad to have you all as a part of it. So thanks to all of you for your interest and being a part of this, what we're creating. That's it for me. I don't have anything else unless there's any more questions.
The only thing I would add on to any of this is if you know of people that might be interested or people you want to reconnect with that have made their home in SL, because they felt that, they suffered so much, for the IW stuff and all the others, invite them to take a look at the website. And eventually when we can do, account creation, invite them to come and kick the tires around. It's not going to hurt them. It's free. And you never know. You might find some old friends, reconnect. So that's all I would add.
All right. I think we're done. Thank you, everybody, and I hope we see you in Skye Grid.
Yes, thanks for coming. I'll go ahead and close this stage once everybody leaves, and this will probably be the vehicle we'll use going forward for meetings like this. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.